At 12:11 in the morning, the lights inside the Margrave Hotel went out so completely that people later remembered the silence before they remembered the dark. There was no flicker first, no brown dimming in the sconces, no polite warning from the little brass lamps on the lobby tables. One moment, the old hotel was glowing with amber light, its mirrors holding a dozen reflections of the late guests still moving through the lobby. And the next moment, the whole building fell into a blackness so dense that the marble floor seemed to disappear under everyone's feet. The chandelier above the central staircase clicked once as its crystals stopped humming. The elevator bell gave a strangled chime between the 4th and 5th floors. Somewhere down the eastern corridor, a woman screamed because she had been looking into a restroom mirror and suddenly saw nothing at all. The Margrave was almost a century old, a 6-story hotel built of pale limestone at the edge of Dunley Cross, where the business district sloped toward old rail warehouses and a dry creek bed lined with weeds. It had survived 3 owners, 2 fires in neighboring buildings, several lawsuits over its narrow staircases, and a long decline that had left its grandeur patched rather than restored. The lobby still had carved columns and a circular desk with a brass key return slot that had not been used in years, but the carpet near the revolving door was threadbare. The banquet room smelled faintly of dust when the air conditioning failed, and the basement level on current hotel maps ended in a blank rectangle marked mechanical, no access. The blackout that night was not limited to the Margrave. 4 blocks of Dunley Cross went dark after a transformer behind the courthouse failed under a windless heat that had been building all week. The traffic lights died. The tavern signs went out. The courthouse clock stopped at 12:12. On Brimmer Avenue, people stepped onto sidewalks holding their phones above their heads, trying to make the screens behave like lanterns. For 12 minutes, the police dispatch center took calls about trapped elevators, alarms, confused elderly residents, and one man who claimed sparks were falling from the power lines near the old printing plant. At 12:34, a call came in from the Margrave Hotel. The caller was Vera Holst, the general manager, and the first thing the dispatcher noticed was that she did not sound hysterical. She sounded breathless, yes, and frightened in the narrow way people become frightened when they are trying to manage others at the same time. But she was organized. She gave the address. She gave the number of registered guests. She explained that emergency lights had failed in 2 stairwells. Then her voice tightened. One guest was missing. His name was Raphael Thorne. He was 42 years old, staying alone in room 614, checked in 3 nights earlier, paid through Friday, silver rental car still in the lot. He had come down during the blackout, angry and sweating, asking why the alarms were not working and why he could smell hot metal in his room. Vera said he had refused to wait in the lobby with the other guests. He had walked toward the west service stairs after arguing with the electrician who had been called to the building earlier that night. He had not come back. The dispatcher asked when he had last been seen. Vera paused just long enough for that pause to be remembered on the recording. About 12:21, she said. Maybe 12:22. He was holding his phone up for light. He said he was going to get air. Was anyone with him? No, but Galen Sloat followed him a minute later. Who is Galen Sloat? Our emergency electrical contractor. He was already here because of the cooling problem. He and Mr. Thorne exchanged words in the lobby. I need officers here. The guest's sister called him twice, and he didn't answer. His car is still here. His luggage is upstairs. This is not right. By the time officers arrived, power had returned to most of Brimmer Avenue. The Margrave's lobby lights came back in uneven sections. First the desk lamp, then the chandelier, then the corridor sconces with a low electrical buzz that made people look upward. Guests were gathered on couches and luggage carts, fanning themselves with restaurant menus. Vera stood behind the front desk in a linen blazer, her hair pinned tight, a battery lantern still burning beside the register. She had written names and room numbers on a yellow legal pad. She had already sent a bell attendant to check stairwells. She had already told guests not to return to their rooms until police cleared the building. She looked like the only person inside the hotel who knew how to keep fear in lines. Officer Maceo Brint, who answered the call with his partner Elise Durao, later said, "Vera's calm was the reason the first hour felt less chaotic than it should have. She did not cry. She did not speculate beyond what she had seen. She produced Raphael's registration card, a photocopy of his driver's license, and the incident note she had started when he complained earlier that evening about intermittent power in his room. Room 614 had been searched by a front desk clerk and a police officer at 12:58. The door was unlocked with the MasterCard. Inside, the bed was turned down but not slept in. A suitcase sat open on the stand. 3 shirts hung in the wardrobe. There was a small black notebook on the desk, a paper cup of melted ice, a phone charger, and a paperback novel face down on the blanket. Raphael's wallet was not there. His phone was not there. His room key was missing. That detail became important only much later. At the time, it seemed ordinary. Guests carried room keys. The Margrave used modern plastic cards for most guests, but the electronic locks on the 6th floor had been unreliable for months. Because of that, the desk kept a set of brass emergency keys on red acrylic fobs for rooms 601 through 628. They hung in an old drawer behind the front desk, each one stamped with a room number. The hotel used them when batteries died or when the system failed. Raphael had received the brass key for 614 at 9:18 that evening, after coming down to say his card would not open his room. Vera signed the paper log herself. When officers asked about the key, she said he had taken it with him when he left the lobby. She remembered seeing the red fob in his right hand, swinging against his thigh as he walked toward the west corridor. Galen Sloat denied following him. He was found 20 minutes later in the loading alley, sitting on the lowered tailgate of his truck, smoking in the humidity while the building's exhaust fans coughed back to life overhead. He was 37, broad through the shoulders, with a gray work shirt darkened at the collar. His temper was already known in Dunley Cross. He had been fired by the hotel once, rehired as a contractor twice, and cited by the city for stripping copper from a condemned laundromat without a permit. That night, he had a fresh scrape along his cheek and a blackened mark on his left palm. He said the palm came from a live panel. He said the cheek came from bumping into the loading dock in the dark. Had he argued with Raphael Thorne? Everybody argued, Galen said. The building went black. Rich man from upstairs started asking why I hadn't fixed it. I told him I wasn't the power company. Had he followed him? No. Where had he gone after the argument? Outside, to smoke. Ask anyone. No one could confirm the exact minute. The security cameras had failed during the outage, and the emergency backup that was supposed to keep the lobby system running had not held a charge. The west service stairwell had no camera at all. The alley camera over the loading dock had recorded blackness and a few frames of white static. At 2:17, Raphael's phone was found in the gutter behind a closed print shop 2 blocks from the hotel. Its screen was cracked. It had been wiped by rainwater from a broken air conditioning drain, but it still powered on. The last outgoing call had been to his sister, Isabel Thorne, at 11:46 p.m. The last typed but unsent message said only, "The old stairs are not on the plan." For the first week, those 7 words seemed like the most important thing Raphael had left behind. Isabel Thorne drove in from Mercer City before sunrise. She was younger than Raphael by 5 years, a math teacher with short dark hair and a way of standing very still when people talked to her. She did not collapse when Detective Jessa Novick told her they had not found her brother. She sat in the interview room, both hands around a paper cup of water she did not drink, and corrected every small wrong assumption made about him. He was not impulsive. He would not wander during a blackout to sightsee. He did not like enclosed spaces, but he would never leave luggage, notes, and his car behind without telling her. He traveled for work, but he checked in every night when he was away. He was careful in unfamiliar buildings. Too careful, sometimes. Their father had worked construction and had taught them as children to notice exits, floor slopes, the smell of old wiring, the difference between a locked door and a door made to look locked. "What was he doing in Dunley Cross?" Jessa asked. "Work," Isabel said. "What kind of work?" "He reviews loss claims for an insurance firm. Mostly property damage, old commercial buildings, disputed repairs." "Was he reviewing the Margrave?" Isabel hesitated. It was the first time her composure shifted. "I think so," she said. "He said it was supposed to be routine. He didn't name the hotel at first. Then 2 nights ago, he sent me a picture of the lobby floor and wrote, 'This place keeps pretending the ground floor is the bottom.'" Jessa wrote the sentence down. In the early interviews, Vera Holst was helpful with a kind of exhausted patience that made officers trust her more each time. She explained the hotel's electrical issues, the deadlock batteries, the overloaded cooling system, the city transformer failure. She gave them Galen Sloat's prior invoices and a written warning he had received for entering guest areas without signing in. She remembered Raphael asking too many questions about service doors. She remembered him being irritated when staff could not answer. She remembered Galen bristling when Raphael mentioned code violations. "I don't want to accuse anyone," she told Detective Novick in a small office behind the front desk, where binders were stacked in neat columns and a framed inspection certificate hung slightly crooked on the wall. "But Mr. Sloat knows the old building better than anyone, and he was angry. People think anger disappears when the lights come back. It doesn't." For months, the investigation kept circling Galen. There were reasons. He had left the hotel at 12:49 and driven south instead of home. He said he was too irritated to sleep and went for fuel, but the station camera showed him dumping something into a trash barrel. It turned out to be a burned work glove. His explanation was that he had scorched it on a panel and did not want to be fined for unsafe gear. The scrape on his cheek was photographed. A guest on the second floor remembered hearing a man's voice curse in the west stairwell around 12:25, although she could not say whose voice it was. Another guest remembered seeing a maintenance-looking man near the side door. Galen's truck bed held coil wire, bolt cutters, and a crowbar, all common in his work, and all ugly when laid out in evidence photographs. Search teams covered the alleys, the empty lots near the creek bed, the warehouse spurs, the locked rooms of the hotel, the roof, the old elevator machine space, the linen rooms, the banquet storage areas, the crawl space under the bar, and the storm drains out to 12th Street. They brought dogs through twice. The dogs showed interest near the west corridor, then lost direction where foot traffic and old cleaning chemicals confused everything. The hotel basement, as it appeared on the current city plan, contained only boilers, a locked electrical cage, water heaters, and a short hallway ending in a cinder block wall painted beige. The wall was marked as a mold abatement seal from a renovation 15 years earlier. Vera produced the permit summary. The city records were thin but present. No access was listed beyond it. No officer had legal reason to break through. The local paper called Raphael the Blackout guest. It was a phrase that bothered Isabel so deeply, she wrote a letter to the editor, asking them to use his name. They did for a while. Then the story became easier to summarize than to feel. Hotel guest vanishes in outage. Contractor questioned. Phone found in alley. No body. No arrests. Vera gave one television interview 6 days after Raphael disappeared. She stood in the lobby near the grand staircase, wearing the same linen blazer, though everyone knew the hotel air conditioning was still failing. She looked drawn and sincere. "I keep replaying those minutes," she said. "I keep thinking that if I had stopped him, if I had made him stay at the desk, maybe we would know where he is. This hotel is old, but it is not heartless. We are cooperating completely." People believed her. Even Isabel, who did not like Vera, admitted to Jessa that the woman seemed stricken. The Margrave stayed open for another 7 weeks, then closed abruptly when its lender filed to take control of the property. Guests were relocated. Staff were laid off in a side banquet room with the lights turned up too bright. Vera Holst remained as a paid caretaker for the receivership, coming in 3 days a week to meet inspectors, unlock offices, and answer questions from insurance representatives. She sent Isabel 2 boxes of Raphael's belongings in October: shirts, toiletries, the paperback novel, the black notebook, the charger, a receipt from the hotel bar, and a folded city map with 3 service alleys circled in pencil. There was no room key in the boxes. Jessa noticed, and so did Isabel. But by then, it only confirmed what Vera had said at the beginning. Raphael had taken the key with him into the west corridor. Somewhere between the Margrave and the gutter behind the print shop, the key had vanished with him. The case cooled in the way a building cools after the furnace fails, room by room. The first urgency left. The press stopped calling. Galen Sloat hired a lawyer, gave no further interviews, and moved to his sister's house in another county after someone painted "Killer" on his shop door. Raphael's file took on the shape of questions answered only halfway. Why had he mentioned old stairs not on a plan? Why had he taken photos of corridor corners and floor vents? Why did the hotel have a sealed area beneath a sealed area, according to a retired city clerk who vaguely remembered plans from the 1980s but could not find them? Why had Raphael's phone been found so cleanly separated from his wallet, which never turned up? Detective Novick kept a photocopy of Raphael's unsent message taped inside the file cover. The old stairs are not on the plan. In late January, 7 months after the blackout, the Margrave's lobby furniture was cataloged for auction. The job went to a small firm that specialized in hotel liquidations, and the cataloger assigned to the front desk was a woman named Tally Brisk, who had once worked at a museum and hated throwing away anything with a number on it. The circular desk was too large to move in one piece, so it had to be separated from the wall. When workers pulled it forward, the brass key return slot coughed out a century of dust, 2 broken pencils, a child's marble, 3 old luggage claim stubs, and 1 red acrylic fob that clattered onto the marble floor. The fob was stamped 600 euro for. Tali picked it up because the key attached to it wasn't dusty, in the same way as the rest of the objects. Its grooves held a pale gray powder. Its brass bow had been rubbed clean at the edges, as if it had been handled often. A strip of black tape, torn so thin it looked like a shadow, clung near the teeth. She knew the missing guest's room number because everyone in Dunley Cross knew it by then. She called the receivership attorney, who called the police, who called Detective Novick at home while she was making coffee before dawn. The key changed the case before anyone put it into a lock. Vera had said she saw Raphael carry it toward the west corridor. If the key had fallen into the lobby's old return chute, either Raphael had come back to the desk area after Vera claimed he left, or someone else had placed it there. The slot opened from the guest side of the desk into a narrow metal trough that fed an interior drawer once used for overnight key returns. The drawer had been painted shut years earlier, then blocked by a computer tower and a receipt printer. Staff no longer used it. Guests no longer noticed it. During the blackout, with the desk lanterns and frightened people moving in confusion, it would have been easy to drop something into that slot without being seen. Jessa brought the key to Rugger Slade, a locksmith who had worked on the Margrave in the 1990s and had kept copies of old key charts because, as he said, buildings forgot themselves before locksmiths did. Slade was 71, with nicotine-stained fingers and a magnifying visor he wore like a crown. He put Raphael's room key under the lamp, then frowned. "This is not 614, he said. "The fob says 614. "The fob lies. He took a framed chart from the wall and laid the key beside a yellowed pattern sheet. The cut was too deep near the shoulder and too shallow at the tip. Guest keys from the 6th floor used a different blank. This key was older, heavier, and belonged to a restricted service ring from before the hotel changed lock systems. Its stamped code had been filed away, but not perfectly. Under the brass scratches, 2 letters remained. SB. "What does SB mean?" Jessa asked. "Sub-basement, if I had to bet money," Slade said. Margrave had one, maybe 2, depending on who you ask. The old service core dropped lower than the boiler room. Laundry chutes, storage vaults, maybe a coal run before gas heat. I never liked that building. Every door thought it was more important than the room behind it. The current hotel plans had no sub-basement. The 1978 fire map showed a stair marked lower service, but the line stopped in a corner, now occupied by vending machines outside the West Banquet Hall. The 1993 renovation plan had that same space crossed out with the notation filled and sealed. The mold abatement permit Vera had produced during the first search did not include photographs. The contractor listed on the permit had dissolved 10 years earlier. At 4:20 that afternoon, Jessa and Detective Paolo Drex walked through the empty Margrave with a city inspector, a locksmith, 2 evidence technicians, and a search warrant. The lobby smelled of coal dust and old lemon polish. Without guests and desk lamps, the place seemed less grand than stubborn, a large, tired animal refusing to lie down. Sheets covered the sofas. The front desk stood pulled from the wall, wires hanging behind it like roots. In the west corridor, the vending machines had been unplugged and rolled aside, exposing wallpaper faded around their outlines. Behind the machines was a beige wall. Nothing about it looked secret. It had baseboard molding and the same scuffed paint as the rest of the corridor. But when Slade tapped the wall near the floor, the sound changed. Hollow, then dense, then hollow again. The city inspector ran a stud finder across it and marked 3 vertical lines. Paolo used a utility knife to slice through paint along a seam no one had noticed because someone had filled it carefully. Under the paint was a metal door frame. The key did not fit the first lock they exposed. It fit the second, lower lock, hidden under a square plate of painted metal. Slade turned it once, twice, and the mechanism gave a heavy internal click that seemed too loud in the empty corridor. The door did not open because cinder blocks had been built against the other side. That was when everyone stopped speaking. A sealed door was one thing. A sealed door that still had a working lock behind a false wall was another. Jessa got a second warrant to breach the barrier. The work took 4 hours. The first blocks came out clean. The deeper blocks were newer, set in different mortar, and behind them, the air changed. It became colder. Mineral. Stale in a way that felt less like disuse than concealment. The stairs behind the wall descended in a steep turn. They were narrow, concrete, and coated with a gray powder that stuck to the treads. Halfway down, investigators found a torn piece of black electrical tape adhered to the railing. Near the bottom, under the dust, was a smear the size of a thumbprint that later tested as Raphael's blood. The sub-basement wasn't filled. It had never been filled. It consisted of 3 low rooms beneath the west half of the hotel. An old laundry sorting room with rusted iron racks, a pump chamber with dry pipes, and a rectangular storage bay with white tile halfway up the walls. Someone had run temporary power down there at some point. The wires had been cut. A plastic lantern sat on its side near the storage bay entrance. Batteries corroded inside. Beside it lay Raphael's wallet, empty of cash but still holding his license. His messenger bag was under a collapsed shelf. Inside were claim photographs, a small flashlight with a cracked lens, a folded copy of an old architectural plan, and a hotel napkin on which he had written 3 words in pencil. Not mold, people. In the far corner of the storage bay, behind a sheet of plywood nailed across an alcove, they found him. There were no television cameras when Raphael Thorne came out of the Margrave. Jessa made sure of that. Isabel was called before the press, before the hotel receiver, before Galen Sloat's attorney, before Vera Holst. She arrived after midnight and stood outside the loading alley while the coroner's vehicle idled with its lights off. She did not ask to see what could not help her. She asked whether he had been alone down there. Jessa said, no. Because under the same sealed level, in a bricked service niche near the pump chamber, investigators had found older human remains wrapped in a hotel mattress cover that had gone brittle with age. Near them was a name badge from the Margrave staff uniform, the kind used before plastic pins, corroded but readable after cleaning. Nestor Balin. Isabel knew the name. Raphael had written it in his black notebook on the second page. For the first time in 7 months, the investigation no longer began with a blackout. It began 15 years earlier, with a hotel porter no one had looked for properly. Nestor Balin had been 26 when he disappeared from Dunley Cross. He had come from a smaller town west of the river, worked irregular jobs, and taken a porter position at the Margrave during a renovation year when the hotel was trying to reopen its banquet level. His missing person report was thin. According to city records, he had stopped showing up for work, left his rented room unpaid, and was believed to have taken a bus to the coast. No family nearby, no vehicle, no bank account with enough activity to follow. The report had been closed administratively after 10 months. Raphael had found him while investigating an insurance claim. That was the part Vera had not known at first, and the part that made her original fear more desperate. 3 months before the blackout, the Margrave filed a claim for electrical damage after a small fire in a 6th-floor panel. The insurer assigned Raphael to review whether the damage came from a covered power surge or long-term neglect. He visited once quietly, then again as a guest, because hotels showed more truth to guests than inspectors. He requested old plans from city archives. He took photos of heat staining around vents. He noticed that the west half of the building drew less power than its square footage suggested, except during certain nights when a concealed line under the banquet floor carried load to equipment not shown on the current system. He asked a retired desk clerk about staff who had disappeared during the renovation years. The clerk gave him Nestor's name and said, with the shame of someone who had waited too long to say it, "He slept downstairs because they let him. That place had rooms under rooms." Raphael told Isabel only pieces. He knew she worried. He told her the Margrave might be hiding more than bad wiring. He said the building had a sealed lower level, but fresh dust at the seams. He said a woman at the desk watched him too closely when he asked about old staff housing. That woman was Vera Holst. 15 years earlier, Vera was not yet the general manager. She was the assistant night manager, ambitious, precise, and fiercely loyal to the hotel's owner, Conrad Lim, a man who died before Raphael's disappearance and left behind debts more carefully organized than his records. The Margrave renovation had gone over budget. Temporary workers were paid in cash. Storage rooms were converted without permits. The sub-basement, officially sealed for mold, was actually used as unlicensed sleeping space for workers who had nowhere else to go between shifts. It had poor ventilation, a patched heater, and a door that locked from the hallway if the old service latch was thrown. Nestor Balin died down there during a night when a portable heater filled the room with smoke after an electrical fault. The death may not have begun as murder. That mattered to lawyers. It mattered less to his sister, who was found after the case reopened and who had spent 15 years believing he had chosen not to come home. The cover-up had begun because Conrad Lim feared criminal charges, bankruptcy, and the loss of the hotel days before a refinancing inspection. According to what investigators later proved, Vera helped clean the room, remove records, and seal the stair. Nestor's name disappeared from payroll. A bus station clerk remembered selling a ticket to a woman who used his name and paid cash. Someone mailed his sister a postcard with one sentence in handwriting that was not his: "Going west for better work. Do not worry." The sealed basement became a blank space on paper. That blank space was what Raphael found. The room key explained how he entered it. During the blackout, the hotel electronic system failed, and Vera handed out brass keys to guests with dead locks. Raphael had already been given what he believed was the emergency key to room 614. In reality, someone had placed the old sub-basement key on the 614 fob. Whether Vera did it to lure him or to frighten him was debated later. Jessa believed Vera intended only to find out how much he knew. If Raphael tried to open his room and failed, he would come back to the desk. If he recognized the key as a service key, he might expose his own investigation. But Raphael was exactly the sort of person who noticed keyways and old plans. At 12:18, while guests gathered in the lobby, and Galen Sloat argued near the service corridor, Raphael saw that the key in his hand matched the restricted service marks on the plan in his bag. He went toward the west corridor not to get air, but to test a door that should not exist. Vera followed him. Galen Sloat did go outside to smoke. That part, eventually, was proven by a bar receipt from a waitress who stepped into the alley and bummed a lighter from him at 12:24. She had not come forward earlier because she was drinking during her shift and did not want her manager to know. Her memory cleared him too late to save his reputation, but not too late to save his freedom. The confrontation in the sub-basement was reconstructed from fragments: Raphael's broken flashlight, Vera's shoe prints and dust, a bend in the metal railing, blood on the lower stair, and a partial recording from Raphael's phone that had captured audio for 48 seconds before the device was damaged. The phone had not been wiped by rain, as they first thought. It had been deliberately thrown hard enough to crack the screen, then left under the drain behind the print shop. Forensic recovery found a temporary audio file created when Raphael accidentally activated a note-taking app as he moved through the dark. On the recording, footsteps descended. Raphael whispered, "This is occupied." Then Vera's voice, closer than expected, said, "You shouldn't have come down here." He answered, "Who is Nestor?" There was a scraping sound. Vera said his name once, not loudly, almost with disappointment. Then the phone struck something, and the recording ended. The sealed basement revealed more than Raphael's final minutes. It revealed the hotel's habits. Behind a loose tile in the old laundry room, investigators found a plastic envelope containing staff time cards from the renovation year, a handwritten cash payroll list, and 3 inspection notices Conrad Lim had never filed. Vera's fingerprints were on the envelope, though she argued she had handled many old records as manager. In a rusted cabinet were medicine bottles, cheap razors, a cracked comb, and a paperback dictionary marked with Nestor Belan's initials. The air vents had been packed from the inside with towels that matched the hotel laundry inventory from that year. The temporary heater was still there, its cord melted in one place and taped in another. The current crime had been layered over the old one with frightening care. After the confrontation, Raphael had been left in the storage bay. Vera returned upstairs during the blackout window and used the chaos she had already described to create the visible story. She told staff Raphael had walked toward the west stairs. She repeated Galen's name 3 times to 3 different people. She used a desk line to call Raphael's phone after it had been taken, creating a missed call that made it seem he was away from the building. She went outside through the loading door after power returned and placed the phone near the print shop drain, where water would damage it, but not wash it away. Later, when police were searching rooms, she stood near the lobby legal pad and wrote times with the confidence of someone making memory look official. But she made one mistake because the hotel itself was too old to obey her. She needed the false 614 key gone. If police found it on Raphael or in the sub-basement, they would ask why a guest key opened a door that did not exist. In the confusion after the first search, she dropped it into the brass key return slot, expecting it to fall into the inner drawer beneath the desk, where she could retrieve it later when alone. She did not know the drawer had been blocked by a warped metal diverter installed decades earlier to stop keys from jamming. The key slid into a side cavity between the desk and the wall. It stayed there for 7 months, close enough to the lobby to be ordinary, hidden enough to become a witness. When Jessa and Paolo brought Vera Holst in, she arrived with an attorney and the same careful posture she had shown on television. Her linen blazer was gone, replaced by a dark winter coat. Her hair was still pinned tight. She looked older, only around the mouth. Jessa placed a photograph of the red 614 fob on the interview table. Vera did not touch it. "That's one of our old emergency keys," she said. "It doesn't open room 614. "I wouldn't know. I don't cut keys." "It opens the sub-basement door." "There is no sub-basement." Jessa placed the second photograph down, the exposed stairs behind the breached wall. Vera looked at it the way people look at a grave before they admit they recognize the cemetery. "That area was sealed before my time as manager," she said, "but not before your time at the hotel." The interview lasted 4 hours. Vera denied placing the key. She denied following Raphael. She denied knowing Nestor Balan. Then Paolo slid a copy of the old cash payroll list across the table. Vera's initials appeared beside Nestor's name for 13 weeks. VH in blue ink. Not proof of murder, but proof of memory. Her attorney asked for a break. During the break, Vera sat alone with her hands folded. The camera in the interview room recorded her looking not at the door, not at the mirror, but at the photograph of the exposed stairs. She whispered something no one heard until the audio was enhanced. "I told him not to unlock it." That sentence did not convict her by itself. It did something more damaging. It made her later explanations smaller. Vera's first partial story was that Raphael had fallen. He had insisted on going down the stairs despite her warning. He had become aggressive when she tried to stop him. In the dark, he slipped, struck his head, and she panicked because of what the basement contained. She admitted moving his phone. She admitted dropping the key. She did not admit harming him. Forensics narrowed that story until it had nowhere to stand. The blood pattern on the railing showed an impact from behind, not a fall forward. Raphael's cracked flashlight had been stepped on after it broke. Vera's shoes, recovered from a storage unit she rented 2 days after the disappearance, carried gray sub-basement dust and a small fragment of tile glaze matching the lower laundry wall. A cleaning towel with Raphael's blood had been found in a sealed bag in the manager's office ceiling, pushed above an acoustic tile. The towel had Margrave laundry markings from the current year, not the renovation year. There were 2 crimes, separated by 15 years, and Vera stood in both rooms. The hardest part to prove was motive, because motive had changed as the night changed. She had not woken up that morning planning to kill Raphael Thorne. She had spent 15 years telling herself that the first sealed room was something done by desperate people in a desperate season, and that Nestor Balan was already beyond saving when she helped Conrad Lim erase him. Then Raphael arrived with questions, old plans, photographs, and a name she had trained herself not to hear. He threatened not only a hotel sale or an insurance claim, but the story Vera used to live with herself. He made the blank space on the plan into a person. The prosecutors argued that she acted to keep the first lie sealed. The defense argued that panic and accident explained foolish concealment better than intent. But the jury heard the recovered audio, saw the key, saw the false wall, and heard from Nestor's sister, Alina Bellin, who held her brother's dictionary with both hands as if it were fragile enough to breathe. Isabel Thorne testified for less than 20 minutes. She described Raphael as cautious, irritatingly methodical, funny when relaxed, and unable to leave a wrong number alone. She said he had a habit of photographing hotel room doors because he forgot numbers in long hallways. On the night he checked in, he sent her a picture of the brass key fob lying in his palm. In that picture, the red acrylic was chipped on the upper right edge. The fob found in the key return chute had the same chip. "It was his key," the prosecutor said. "Yes," Isabel answered. "And what did it open?" Isabel looked at Vera, then at the jury. The place they said wasn't there. The trial also cleared Galen Sloat in public, though public correction never travels as far as suspicion. He testified in a shirt buttoned too tightly at the throat and kept rubbing the healed line on his cheek. He admitted he had hated Raphael in the moment because Raphael looked at the electrical panel and immediately understood how sloppy the work was. He admitted he had dumped the burned glove because he was afraid a code violation would ruin him. He admitted he had lied about driving south because he had gone to see a woman whose husband worked nights. "Did you follow Raphael Thorne into the West Corridor?" the prosecutor asked. "No." "Did you harm him?" "No." "Do you know now why Vera Holst wanted officers looking at you?" Galen's jaw moved before he answered. "Because I was easy." In the months after the basement opened, Dunley Cross behaved the way towns do when an old building confesses. People remembered things with new urgency. A former banquet server recalled Vera forbidding staff from storing chairs near the west vending alcove. A retired fire inspector remembered being discouraged from returning after a renovation walkthrough. A night cleaner said the west corridor wall had always felt cooler than the rest of the hall. Each memory came late, carrying guilt inside it. Jessa took the statements anyway. Late truth was not less true. It was only less generous. The Margrave never reopened as a hotel. The receivership sale collapsed after the basement discovery. For a while, the building stood empty with plywood over the lower windows and police seals on 2 doors. People crossed the street to avoid walking too close, as if a hidden room could be contagious. Then the city bought the property for less than the land was worth and announced that the unsafe rear wing would be demolished. Preservation groups argued about the staircase, the columns, the desk. Isabel did not attend the meetings. Alina Balan did once, sitting in the back without speaking, holding a folder of translated documents that proved her brother had existed in more places than the hotel had allowed. When the demolition crew removed the circular front desk, they found the inside of the key return chute scraped bright where decades of keys had struck metal. Jessa asked for that section to be preserved as evidence until appeals ended. It looked unimpressive in the property room. A bent brass slot, a dented trough, screws in a plastic bag. But it had done what people had failed to do. It had kept the thing dropped into it. It had refused, without intention, to let Vera retrieve the final piece of her story. Vera Holst was convicted of second-degree murder in Raphael's death, manslaughter, and concealment charges related to Nestor Balan, evidence tampering, and obstruction. Conrad Lim was dead and could not be tried, though the judge allowed his role to be described at sentencing because a crime committed by the dead still shapes the living. Vera stood in court in a charcoal suit and said nothing until the judge asked if she wished to speak. She turned slightly toward the families. "I was afraid," she said. Alina Balan made a sound that was almost a laugh, but not from humor. Isabel did not move. Vera continued. "I know that doesn't answer for anything, but I was afraid." The judge said fear had been present in both deaths, but not only hers. Nestor had been afraid in a room no one admitted existed. Raphael had been afraid when he understood the door had closed behind him. Their families had been left in the longest kind of fear, the one with no room number, no body, no true last place. Vera was sentenced to 38 years. On the first anniversary of Raphael's disappearance, Isabel stood across from the Margrave at 12:11 in the afternoon, not midnight, because she had stopped giving the dark more ceremony than it deserved. Alina stood beside her. Galen Sloat came but stayed near the curb, hands in his pockets, not sure whether anyone wanted him there. Detective Novick attended without speaking to reporters. The city had not yet decided what kind of plaque would be placed after demolition, so Isabel taped a sheet of paper to the plywood door. It had 2 names on it, Raphael Thorne and Nestor Balin. Beneath the names, she wrote, "They were here." No one made a speech. For a minute, the street was full of ordinary noise. Buses sighing at the stop, a delivery cart rattling over uneven pavement, a woman calling to someone across Brimmer Avenue. The hotel rose behind the plywood, pale and stained, and no longer able to pretend that its map was complete. Isabel looked up at the 6th floor, where her brother's room had been, then down at the blocked west side of the lobby, visible through a dirty pane. She had spent months imagining Raphael outside the hotel, because that was the story everyone handed her. In an alley, in a stranger's truck, on a road leaving town. The truth was smaller and worse. He had been inside the whole time, beneath the feet of people who gave statements, beneath the desk where Vera wrote her careful timeline, beneath the lobby where cameras came to film concern. He had not vanished because of a blackout. The blackout had only made the old lie useful again. The room key stayed in evidence through the trial. After sentencing, the court released it to Isabel because prosecutors no longer needed the physical object, only its photographs and chain of custody. She did not keep it at home. She brought it to the city archive, where Alina had already donated Nestor's dictionary. The archivist placed both items in separate acid-free boxes. On the label for the key, Isabel insisted that they not write "Key to Room 614." They wrote, "Brass service key disguised as Room 614 key, recovered from Margrave Hotel key return chute." It was a long label. Accurate labels often are. Years later, when people in Dunley Cross told the story, they still began with the blackout because the human mind likes a dramatic first scene. They described the city going dark, the hotel lobby full of heat, Vera Holst at the desk with her legal pad, Raphael Thorne walking toward a corridor with a red fob in his hand. But those who had followed the trial knew the blackout was not the mystery. Darkness does not invent sealed rooms. It only protects them for a while. The real beginning was a door removed from a plan. The real witness was a key that did not open what its number promised. The real ending came when that key turned inside a lock buried behind paint and block, and the Margrave Hotel, after 15 years of holding its breath, finally had to let the air out.